Nepotism, favoritism, and a hostile culture. All these are claims the Department of Codes and Regulations outgoing director has been facing for months. But during a Metro investigation into these claims, Director Richard Price announces his retirement. And this comes as troubleshooter Alina Noakes has been pressing Codes and Regs leadership and Metro officials about those ongoing claims.
When I asked Mayor Craig Greenberg's press secretary, Matt Mudd, if Price's retirement was tied to these allegations, I was told they had nothing more to add. But it's an important question to consider, considering the complaints we've been digging into. Complaints about Price's leadership date back months. A law firm contracted by the city even substantiated some of them in their own investigation more than 6 months ago. But employees I talked with anonymously out of fear of retaliation say they felt nothing ever changed.
I mean, it's just unprecedented.
Local Union 2501 members tell Wave News the culture within the Department of Codes and Regulations has become untenable. The union has filed 12 grievances in less than a year, citing repeated violations of the collective bargaining agreement. The alleged violations run the gamut: nepotism, favoritism, unequal treatment, retaliatory behavior, and more. The grievances reflect what Union VP Nathaniel Haggard believes to be as many as 100 ethics complaints. So I filed an official open records request and received more than 24 of those complaints.
When Director Price became our director, he met with all divisions, all employees, and stated that he would not run the department with threats and intimidation.
Has he held up that end of the deal?
No, he has not.
Those records I obtained detail the alleged problems. Several focus on Director Richard Price's pilot program called CREST, tasked with responding to high priority and emergency code violations. CREST was recently dissolved. The tab for it on the Metro's website now gone. For months, it's been the subject of many complaints. Union grievances allege the task force members were handpicked by Price and given special privileges like take-home vehicles, new uniforms, and overtime.
I felt like it was replacing our jobs.
It was definitely an erosion of our collective bargaining agreement.
One complainant alleges that the task force was designed to report directly to Price, and they had no oversight, often running contrary to policy. Other ethics complaints detail an alleged culture filled with threats and retaliation. The director has come close to completely tearing apart our department, writes one employee in an ethics complaint. I guess it is true what has been said to staff by the director. I'll do what I want, said another. Meetings and interactions always include covert and explicit threat of firing, such as the phrase, helping you find employment elsewhere, immediately after chastising staff, says another. One of the anonymous employees I spoke to was told that directly. How'd you take that to mean?
Well, that was pretty much, if you're dissatisfied with what I'm doing it anyway. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. It was put to us pretty plainly that way.
According to another ethics complaint, Director Price is accused of hijacking the disciplinary procedure by changing the way the process plays out. New policy requires all violations be submitted directly to Price first for approval. The union says it's a violation of union rules. These issues with CREST, the culture, and procedural changes have all been issues the union has filed grievances for. Some the Metro has addressed, like reversing the use of take-home cars for CREST and the reporting procedure change. But the complaints persisted.
Our members' complaints aren't being taken seriously. The processes in which we are supposed to do things as outlined in policy aren't being adhered to. And we're trying to uphold our end of the bargain, and we just want, Metro to do the same.
These allegations, along with those of favoritism and nepotism, were part of an independent investigation more than 6 months ago. In July 2025, HR had received such a significant number of complaints against leadership, a third party stepped in to investigate. Despite repeat requests for the full investigative report, the city is refusing to release it, citing attorney-client privilege. But the Metro already gave me a copy of an email to leadership from Price and Henderson's boss, Executive Director of Economic Development, Jeff O'Brien, vaguely detailing that investigation. The city hired an outside law firm in the summer of 2025, asking them to review a fraction of the complaints against leadership HR had received at that time. They detailed these allegations, including claims of toxicity, discouraged reporting of complaints, nepotism, and favoritism of some employees over others. The firm took up 6 of 20 complaints and substantiated violations of personnel policies, which deal with public officials' ethical actions, including avoiding preferential treatment and intimidation and threats. In that email we obtained, they made it clear the department was in a bad spot, saying the trust with leadership and the staff has, quote, deteriorated and needs to be remedied in order for them to be able to effectively lead. The city required additional management training. I attempted to ask Price about these claims directly at a press conference last week.
We're talking about misconduct today with the public. How do you respond to allegations of misconduct?
I'm not taking the questions right now.
Are you sure? I mean, these are directed at your leadership, sir.
Yeah, I know. I'm not taking any questions. It's not true, but.
At that same press conference, I asked Mayor Craig Greenberg how his office was handling the ongoing complaints and the union's official declaration of a hostile work environment.
Well, anytime an allegation is made, we take that seriously, and so we want to do an investigation. We want to talk to the people involved to make sure that we get the facts, that we understand what really happened, and then, of course, we will take appropriate action based on what that shows. And we want everyone who works at Metro government to feel valued and supported and comfortable about their job, and that's critically important to us. So we'll be providing you all with more information here soon. So
that's when I brought up the already completed July 2025 investigation to the mayor.
Why is that the case, that these same issues keep perpetuating?
Yeah, if we don't see improvement, then additional action will be taken, as others have told you. Our team has already taken action, and if more is necessary, more will be coming.
Less than a week after that interview, Price announced he would be retiring January 30th.
Once again, we've asked if Price's retirement is related to the investigation, but the city won't say. Press Secretary Matt Mudd emphasized Metro HR has been following up on concerns and complaints and takes them seriously. They still aren't releasing that full completed investigative report. We filed an appeal with the AG's office. Alina Noakes, Wave News.